Hi and welcome back to Prep Bytes. Okay, so in this video, we're going to be going in and discussing on how exactly is it that we'll be creating our authentication middleware. So the idea is that, see, we are going to be creating a bunch of routes, right? So the thing is, let's say for any operation that you want to do. So far we implemented two of them into our front end, which were the login and the registration one, right? So in the past videos, we've kind of seen how exactly we can go in and implement authentication. And now the part is, see, there has to be some certain set of routes that we want to be protected. Okay, so we'll be calling them as protected routes. So these are routes or operations that we kind of want to ensure that the person is able to do if and only if he is authenticated. Okay, which means if the person has not signed in, then he or she will not be able to go in and perform the operations of that specific route. That is it. Okay, so what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a middleware which will help us to go in and create protected routes, in which the idea is fairly simple. So this is just going to be a middleware. Okay, we'll be creating an authentication middleware which will be added onto some of the routes that we're going to end up creating, such that we can ensure that those specific operations, those specific APIs can only be used if and only if the person has been authenticated. Okay, so that will help us to go in and ensure that, like our app is completely secure and all the tasks that are being done are done by an user who has been authorized to do so. Okay, so the way we are going to go in and achieve this is again by using the same JWT token that we had spoken about. And the idea is fairly simple. Okay. So in order to go in and achieve this, first and foremost, you kind of need to know a bit more in terms of how JWT authentication and authorization works. So we're gonna go in and have a pretty quick discussion on the same, and then we will go in and see the implementation of the same. All right. So the idea here is, if you go into jwt.io, you can read the whole documentation on how exactly JWT helps you to implement authentication and authorization. So within the documentation section, you can just go into the introductory part and you will be able to read the whole the documentation on what exactly JWT is and how exactly what all things does this go in and facilitate. What is the structure, the header, the payload, signature, everything is mentioned and down over here. It will be a pretty quick read. I'll say that if you are new to JWT, please do give it a read. But generally speaking, though, JWT token is something pretty common associated with authentication and authorization. Okay, so the important part, so authentication is something that we've already done. So we are going to be generating this JWT token for each of the users that are going to register in our application. And once that is done, okay, so once the authentication is done, now we need to go in and provide authorization. Okay, so this user is authorized to go in and perform so and so amount of operations. Okay, so let's say I want to go in and find all the list of users. Okay, so what we're going to do today is, in this particular video, we're going to go in and see how exactly we can go in and fetch all the users, and also ensure that this operation of fetching all the users that are currently using our application this operation is protected. We're going to make it protected, right? So the operation of going and fetching all of these users can only be done by a person who is authorized to do so. And how will he be authorized? If he has gone in and successfully registered himself and logged in with the same account. Okay, so unless and until he is authorized to go in and perform the operation, we will not be going in and doing those protected tasks or protected routes. Okay, so this is how it kind of goes in and works. Now, the important word, there's a really important keyword that you'd see over here, and that is called the bearer schema. Okay, so this is something that we are going to be going in and taking advantage of. So if you recall this part, that whenever you go in and you do the registration procedure or the login procedure, we were getting back a response object, right? So that particular response object is kind of going to help us to go in and validate whether that person is authorized to go in and perform these set of tasks. Okay, so the way this works is that each and every other user will have its own token that has been generated for them, right? So if I am generating for my own name, then I'll have a token generated for that particular account, right? So this is how we are going to do this. So the authorization is going to be done by using a header, which is called as the authorization header. Okay, so whenever you're going in and making any type of request, be it a get request or a post request, we are gonna go in and pass an additional header with a parameter called as the authorization parameter. It's gonna be a parameter in the header called as authorization, and the value it's gonna have will be the bearer token. So bearer means who is it that is trying to go in and perform this operation. So that's what we mean by bearer. Okay, the person who bears the token. So that's what we mean by bearer. Bears means hold, right? The meaning of the word is to hold. The person who has something, right? That means bearer. So the syntax is fairly simple. You need to go in and write bearer, authentication. This is the key, and the value will be the bearer token. That's it. Okay, so I can even, even if I go in, I had console logged this particular part in my server, and as you can see, this was an operation that we had did in earlier, and you can see the response object that I'm getting back, right? And within that I have my token available within it. Okay, so just so that you can see it, I had actually introduced an additional variable in the middle and just console.logged it, so I can show this to you. All right, so this token is going to act as our bearer token. Okay, so the person who's trying to go in and perform the operation, we'll call him or her as the bearer. Okay, so in this case, the server's protected routes will check for a valid JWT in the authorization header. So anytime you want to go in and perform any particular operation of any particular protected route, you're going to go in and check the token that is there within the header, which is the authorization header. Okay, so this is how the whole process is going to go in and take place. Now there's also some few additional things that you can go in and read up here and there, but I'll just directly go in and take you through to the implementation. Okay, so even in here you could read this up altogether, that the you can see this here, right? The server's protected routes will check for a valid JWT in the authorization header. So how exactly are we going to go in and do this? Okay, so let me go in and take you through with this process. So in order to go in and implement this, we'll have to create a middleware. Okay, so this authorization that we're doing, in order to go in and say that, okay, this user is able to go in and perform this particular operation, we need a middleware. A middleware is just a function. Okay, middleware is not a big thing. It's just a function which goes in and executes itself before a so and so request and response. Okay, so so from the point the request is sent and from the to the point the response is sent back, between that we can have our middleware to go in and get executed. That's it. So the idea here is to go in and create up a middleware. Okay, so I'm going to just go in and show you the same over here. So I've created this authentication middleware. Okay, and the idea is fairly simple. So what we want to do is, we are going to go in and send a request object, right? We're going to be sending a request object, and that request object will have a header, okay, with this specific header, which is called as the authorization header, and it will start with bearer. So it'll be written as bearer, and right after that, so it's a string, right? Generally, so it'll be written bearer and space, and then you will have the token. So this is how the bearer token is going to look like. So if you want to see how we're going to be sending this, I'll just show you one of the routes that I had created. So this is one of the routes that we're going to require for our application, which is all the available users who have currently registered for our application, right? So I've created an additional controller here in the user controller, and I've also added it within the routes as well. And the idea here is, as you can see, there is a route over here called as fetch users. So far in the previous videos, we only used login and register. We only created those two, but I've managed to go in and add one more route here, which is the fetch users route. And I want this route to be protected, which means that you can go in and fetch the users only and only if you're authorized to do so. So what I'm doing over here is I'm going in and giving this authentication middleware that I've created as protected, okay, as protect. So I've just imported it over here. So protect is the name of the object that we have created out over there. I'm going in and doing a named import here and just specifying the middleware right before the controller for fetching all users. Okay, now what's the idea here? So in order for me to go in and perform operations of this particular route, which is fetch users, if I want to fetch users, I'll have to be logged in, which means I need to have the bearer token. Okay, I need to have the bearer token, which contains my JWT token. Okay, so how exactly does this look like? So if I take you to my user controller and I scroll a bit more down into the bottom part, so this is my fetch users, fetch all users controller that I've created. So what this does is it just goes in and uses a bit of MongoDB expressions. So this is fairly easy to go in and implement. I'm using a small query. Okay, so this is basically so from the request query. So if you're going in and passing some query as in such, which is fetch users / and you pass in a query, you'll be able to go in and get that particular keyword, and it just returns you the user ID of all of those people except for your own. Okay, except for your own ID, it will return the user ID of all the other people. So I'm using this so NE over here means not equal. Okay, so this is I'll just go in and take you through all the expressions that are available in MongoDB as well. It's a quick read that you can go in. It makes the process of going in and accessing data and processing your data from your database way more easier as compared to traditional means. Okay, so what this particular controller does is it just goes in and fetches all the users that have currently registered onto our application. Okay, now the question here is, so where is the bearer token being used, right? So that is basically going to be seen at the point when we are going to go in and actually make the call to the API. So fetch users. So if you recall the UI that we're building, there is a component which is going to go in and show the list of all the users who are, who have currently registered into our application, correct? So there is a component that I built up over here, which is called users. Okay, so what this component does is it just goes in and displays the list of all the users that have currently registered into our application. Okay, so the way this works is fairly simple. Okay, I'm just going to go in and show you how this thing works out. But you can see when I'm going in and making this particular request to this particular route, which is the chat route over here. So if I open this up, back up again into my server, I'm going to go into my server. I'll open up my routes. Okay, no, controllers, user controllers, and there you go. So the idea here is, okay, I think I'll have to go in and open them side by side. Let me just go in and do so. I'll just go in and say open to the side. There we go. Right. It's going to be a bit on the shorter side, but this would do. This would suffice. Okay. Now see this thing over here. See, whenever I'm going in and making, so this is users, right? So this is the component which is going to go in and show the list of all users. So I have this fetch users route, which you can also see in here. So in my routes, user routes, you can see fetch users, right? So it's fetch users. This is the route that is currently protected, which means that if I want to go in and make or access this particular route, which is fetch users, I will have to provide my bearer token. So how exactly, what is the syntax of this bearer token? It's nothing but a string. Okay, as you can see, it's a string which basically will have the word bearer. Okay, it's a string which has bearer space and then the JWT token which has been generated for that user. Now here comes the useful part. See, if you remember in the previous video, we had come across this part where we went in and we stored the JWT token or the response that this API is given into our local storage. Okay, so whenever I go in and log in and whenever I go in and register as a user, it's going to send me back a response object, and that response object would have all of this information regarding name, email, password is not there, but then the JWT token will be part of it. So what we managed to do there was we went in and we stored the data, in our local storage with the name of user data, and I'm fetching the same token from the user data that we've stored in our local storage. So that is what is happening over here. So this is a string. So as we want to put in the value of this particular variable within the string, we are putting dollar, and in the curly brackets we are writing down the name of the variable which holds the token data. Okay, so the token data is available in over here, and the data will be fetched from the local storage. The name of the data, the key of the data is user data. Then from the user data, I'm fetching down the token. Okay, and you can see it in here as well. So I have the data, so I'm taking it in, and then I have the property over here as token. So that's what we're fetching, and we're passing it through. Now the way the middleware goes in and processes this is what we want to see. Okay, so what my authentication middleware will do is it's going to go in and get this request object. The request object will have a header called as authorization, and the value of that authorization header will be a string, which is going to have the value as bearer space and then my JWT token. So if it goes in and has, okay, so this is what we're doing. If the authorization header is present, then what we'll do is we'll try to go in and split that string and extract out the JWT token. So as you can see over here, it's a string, right? So the authorization header, the value of the authorization header is a string. So what are we doing here? As it's a string, we are using the split function. The split function is really simple. You give it a delimiter. You say, okay, so this is a string. I want you to go in and split the string into smaller substrings. At any point of time, you go in and you get a space. So the string is in the syntax that is bearer space JWT token. So what I'm doing over here is I'm extracting out the token, and then we are going in and using this pre-built function, which is called verify. Again, we are getting it from our JWT library that we had, the module that we had installed. And once that is done, we also, so in order to go in and use this verify function, you have to go in and provide it with two things. The first thing is the token. The second thing is the JWT secret, which I already have added in my .env file. Okay, so I've added it in, and then as you can see, I am going in and finding the ID of the user, and then I'm also removing out the password from the information that is going to giving me back. Because the problem here is our user schema kind of makes it so that the password is also, even though it's encrypted, is also going to be part of the data that's going to get sent back. So we are saying minus password so that it doesn't get sent back. And as this is a middleware, we are calling next function, so that the next function, which is in line middleware, so whatever is the next function to be executed, goes in and gets executed after this point. If it causes some issues at any point, we'll go in and throw back an error saying that the person is not authorized or token failed. And then if there is no token at all, then we're going to go in and just say not authorized, no tokens. Okay. And what we're doing is we are going in and exporting this particular middleware of ours. Middleware is nothing but the function as protect. So this is our middleware, which will help us to go in and ensure that we are able to create protected routes which can only be accessed or used provide if and only if you are authorized to do so. So if you have registered yourself and you have logged in with that particular credentials that are given, you will have access to your token. And as you have access to your token, you will be the bearer, okay, which means you have access to the token, so you will be called the bearer. So that's why we call it as bearer tokens. And if you have access to the bearer token, our middleware will go in and evaluate it, verify it, and then alone you will be able to go in and perform these operations. Okay, now if you want to go in, so I've already implemented this, but if you want to go in and see this in action in Postman, you could do so. So I already created in one of these collections for fetch users, as you can see. And one of the things, so for authentication, you can see over here, okay, in authorization, okay, not authentication, on authorization, you can see you'll have like a lot of options over here. So you click on authorization, okay, and here you'll have a bunch of options. You'll have API keys and so much more, right? So I'm going to go with bearer token. You need to go in and select bearer token. Now this here, you need to go in and provide the token of the user who is validated. Okay, so if you have already authenticated yourself, you will have access to your JWT token, right? So what I've done is, so this is user 1 for whom when we've registered user 1, we've also logged in user 1. So we have access to this JWT token. So I'm going to copy this and provide it. So if at all I want to go in and access this fetch users route, I need to be authenticated. So if I don't provide this token here, and let's see what will happen if I don't provide the token here, right? So if I just click on send, you can see not authorized, no token. Okay, so I need to go in and provide this additional header, okay, which is the authorization header that will contain the information of the bearer token. Okay, so the authorization middleware, right, is gonna go in and have the string which will say bearer space and then the name of the token. So that this is the token that this is the token for user 1. Okay, so this is for user 1. I put in the token for user 1. So if user 1 tries to go in and fetch all users, then it will be fine. Okay, so I provided the token for user 1. Now if I click on send, you can see I'm able to go in and fetch the information of all the users who've currently went in and signed in, except for the user himself. Okay, except for the user himself, as you can see, I'm able to go in and fetch in the users for everyone else. That's it. Okay, so this kind of helps us to this authentication middleware is something we'll be using across for a lot of the routes that we'll be creating for our application to go in and work. And the thing here is that the JWT token is pretty crucial to go in and give that added level of security and functionality even to our application, right? So we are using this bearer tokens, which is fairly simple to use. You just need to go in and add this additional header, which is our the authorization header, as you have already seen. And once you go in and do so, okay, let me just go in and open the users component. So as you can see, I have the headers, and within the headers, I am an authorization header, which I'm also passing while I am going in and making this post request. Okay, so this is the users component. Wait a second. I think the name of the component is groups users. Yeah, so this is a users component. Apparently this is, no, not this one. I think apparently the one that we're getting, yeah, this is the one that we're calling. This is for fetch users. Okay, so as you can see, I am again, so the other one that you see is for fetching all the chats. So we'll come back to that later. That's another route. But for the time being, this is the fetch users route that is currently protected by our middleware, and it goes in and authenticates or authorizes the user to go in and perform an operation by verifying your JWT token. Okay, so this is how we can go in and bring in this whole factor of authorizing a user so as to go in and perform some operation in our application. Okay, so that would be all for this particular video. Okay, what we'll be doing in the next session is that we'll be creating some more additional routes. Specifically saying though, we're going to be creating some chat routes which are gonna help us to go in and if you want to create a chat, if you want to create a group, if you want to go in and fetch all the groups, if you want to fetch all the chats, if you so we're going to create some routes that are related to chats, and once we're done with that, we'll be able to go in and take it forward from that point onwards. So that will be all for this particular video. I'll see you in the next one.